Right. So everybody knows that this webinar being provided by Anne Harris on the ABPN platform is being recorded. My name is Jean Davis, and I have the very great privilege of being the chair of ABPN. And I'd like to warmly welcome everyone here this afternoon. And I will now hand over to Anne Harris, our guest speaker. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you very much, Jean, and good afternoon, everybody. When Fiona invited me to give this webinar, she probably didn't know what she was doing, in that I have the ability to make talking an Olympic sport. So I asked Jean what was the best thing to do about questions. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Please feel free to raise your hand during the webinar if that's easiest for you, and I will endeavour to answer them. If not, I'm very happy to take any questions at the end if that works better for people. I would say that I don't even stop to take a breath, so don't wait for a natural pause in the presentation. If you want to ask a question, please just do so. So my name is Anne Harris, and Fiona asked me if I would come and talk to you about different roles really, but that have one focus, which is children's well-being. And I'm doing that from the stance of having been a paediatric and adult nurse and also a social worker. So really, for the next 45 minutes or so, I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. What I want to do is just give you some thoughts, give you some things to maybe think about, and ideas possibly to mull over in the future. So I think we should start with, I don't know how many of you know this redoubtable lady. Her name was Catherine Jane Wood. And she started working at Great Ormond Street as what they elegantly called a lady visitor, which meant basically that she went in and read to children and did what they call menial tasks that nurses were too busy to undertake. She was quite a lady, clearly, and she went on through the ranks. The hospital in those days often employed what they called ward superintendents from their lady visitors, so not with any specific training. But Catherine felt very strongly that this wasn't right, and as you can see in 1888 made the case very clearly that sick children require special nursing and sick children's nurses require special training. And I think we would all agree with that, and we would all echo that. She did return to Great Ormond Street as the lady superintendent in charge of the whole hospital. And I think while I can certainly adhere to most of her thinking, the one thing that I do find a little bit more difficult was that she chose to do the vast majority of her working life as a volunteer, feeling that she shouldn't be paid for it. And possibly not something that we would have quite the same aspirations to today. But she very much did put a mark in the sand and worked with the doctors at Great Ormond Street to develop training to improve the lots of children in hospital. So we need to ask how far that went, really. And then we move on to this very cheerful chappie called Sir Harry Platt. And in 1959, he produced a report called The Welfare of Children in Hospital. He was asked by the government to do this, looking at how children were cared for in hospital. And the most damning statement that I think is included in the report is where he said hospitals were miserable places for children. And he made several recommendations. He said that there should be unrestricted parental access. There should be no visiting hours for parents. We shouldn't have time when parents were not allowed to be with their children. He said that there should be full parental involvement in the care of children, and that children should be cared for in a child-friendly environment with specialist services. Bearing in mind this was in 1959, and yet in the 1980s, not all of these recommendations had been rolled out. Within my own family, my nephew, aged 3, went in for some ENT surgery, was cared for in an adult ward, and my sister, his mother, was sent away to the canteen, told to go and get a cup of tea before anything started in the day, went back to the ward, and her son had already been taken to theatre without her there. So he brought some brilliant recommendations. It's taken a while for them to roll out. And indeed, the Audit Commission did a report called Children First in the 90s that still suggested that all the recommendations had not been implemented even, and that children were not necessarily being cared for in the best places. So where does that leave me? Well, a very long time ago, many, many years ago, fortunately for me, slightly after Catherine Wood and Harry Platt, I went to London to start my nurse training. I'm sure that many people here will have a very similar photo, although hopefully these days not with quite such ridiculous uniforms and hats. And just in case you're any doubt, there I was before I went totally grey. I loved my nurse training. I really enjoyed it. I made some very good friends and I became a staff nurse. I qualified and I became a staff nurse working in the East End of London on a very busy medical ward in the children's hospital. And I thought that was my future. I was really enjoying it and I just assumed that I would potentially work my way through the ranks, but stay working in the hospitals. And then something happened. My sort of road to Damascus moment, if you like. And it was a little boy called Gary. Gary was 3 years old at the time and had been diagnosed. Sorry, can people not see the presentation? Yeah? Oh, okay. So I've just seen a message about it. He had been diagnosed with leukemia. And in those days, children with leukemia were in hospital for a month at the beginning. No question. They stayed in to see if he could be got into remission. Gary went into remission and was due to go home the next day. I was working on nights, and at about 3 a.m, I was talking to Gary's father. And the family had been very involved in Gary's care. We really thought that we had done parental education properly. We really thought that they knew what the implications of his condition were. We really thought they understood what was going on. Perfectly ordinary family, perfectly, normal, usual family. And in the middle of the night, this man asked me a question that was so basic that I thought, you poor thing, you haven't had the chance to make sense of any of this. You've been plunged into this new world. You've had to learn a new language. You've had to be taking care of your son. And we're sending you home tomorrow with very little support. And that's when I felt very, very strongly that there was a missing piece in this jigsaw, that there was something not right. There wasn't a good bridge between home and hospital. And we were sending a family home. As the father said to me, it was like taking a brand new baby home again. Suddenly we were going to be responsible for keeping them alive, and we really don't know what we're doing. And that really made me stop and think. That really made me think about how much do we really think about what it's like for the family when they first go home, what it's like when they're there, they're coping on their own with nobody to call on. And I would say that this was in the very early 1980s, before community children's nurses were as familiar as they are now. They weren't nearly so prevalent. It was quite a rare role. So I felt very strongly that something was missing, and I wanted to see what I could do about it. So I left nursing and I went to train to be a social worker. I was very fortunate because when I qualified, I'm afraid there's quite a lot of awful photographs of me in this. When I qualified, I got a job working with children with cancer, exclusively working with children with cancer. I was based in a multidisciplinary team in a major cancer centre. As a social worker, I worked very closely with the community outreach nurse team. And we had the opportunity to really work with family members, really get to know families, to help them to act as that bridge between home and hospital and to see where it went. I didn't need to be a nurse for this role, but it certainly helped. It made me, it gave me a greater understanding. And I think it also meant that I was quite comfortable and familiar working in hospitals. As many of you will know, working in the community is quite different to working in hospitals. You learn some very important skills. You learn very quickly how to find every public toilet in the patch in which you're working. You learn very quickly how to give really good directions. In the days before sat-nav, you need a community worker to give you directions to get somewhere. And you also learn how to drink hot drinks out of absolutely everything, tea out of anything. Although the reason I don't take milk in anything any longer is that drinking tea with hot condensed milk just finished me off. I really couldn't do it. But because you're trying to build that rapport with families, it was really important. And you also, probably most crucially, learn that you don't wear anything that can't go immediately in the washing machine. One day I went to visit a family at home. Their teenage daughter had a large bone tumor, and the parents wanted to see me. And I went, and there was only the father in. And he was angry at the world. He was really cross with the world. And he was ranting and shouting, not at me, just at life. So I sat and listened to him. And during the time that he was talking, the family dog came and jumped on my knee and curled up and fell asleep. I don't mind dogs too much, so that didn't faze me a lot. But when this poor father stopped, he took one look at me and he said, "Oh, you don't want her on your knee. She's in season." So I get the dog off my knee. I didn't think anything of it. I went on to my next visit, which was to meet the family for the first time, the family of a little girl who'd just come out of hospital with a brain tumor. I went in, the little girl was lying on the sofa. It was near Christmas, so there were Christmas lights. And the mother asked me if I'd like a cup of tea, which I said yes. She opened the kitchen door, at which point the family Old English sheepdog came bounding out of the kitchen like a bullet out of a gun. And it can only be said to indulge in some incredible canine love bombing. I was attached to the sofa by this dog. And the poor mother came rushing out of the kitchen saying, "I honestly don't know what's got into him." And I thought, oh, I do. I really do. I must be smelling delightful. So, like all good community workers, I went home and I got changed. When I went back into the hospital, people were looking at me going, "You weren't wearing that when you went out." But such is life in the community. You have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible. So I stayed working exclusively with children with cancer for probably about 15, 18 years. And then I moved on to working for an organization called Rainbow Trust. Rainbow Trust is a social care organization working with children with life-threatening illness, working to provide family support workers in the community. It was a really good job. It gave me lots of different areas to look at. I became much more involved in policy development. That's when I first really met Katrina and Fiona, when we were looking at how to shape community work and what might happen. It also got me much more involved in fundraising, quite an important part of working in the community. If you can see the slide that's to the bottom left of certainly of my screen, that's me sharing a screen with a stage with Pudsey Bear, something that I can safely say I never thought my nurse training prepared me for. But it was a very good job. It was working flexibly, really, to do whatever it was families needed. The top left photo is during the pandemic when we had to go and do shopping for families who were shielding and before they could get online deliveries. Again, working in the community, very, very useful with my nurse background. So that's me. That's in a nutshell me. And I just wanted to talk to you really about different ways, different roles that you can take with your nurse qualification into the future. Now, I'm quite sure that you are all very familiar with the NHS 10-year plan, Fit for the Future. It's been talked about a lot, and it should be directing the development of healthcare for the next 10 years. Now, anybody that knows me will tell you that I don't have a cynical bone in my body. However, I do think we need to remember that we had the plan in 2000, which was around increasing NHS staffing and looking at healthy eating, looking at early intervention with children. This was the plan that said every 3 to 6-year-old should have one free piece of fruit in school a day. We then had the NHS Improvement Plan in 2004, preventing and tackling health inequalities. We then had 2006, Our Health, Our Care, Our Say, again, very much looking at tackling health inequalities. Healthy People, Healthy Lives, 2010, much the same. How could they develop more in the community? How can we look at health inequalities? How can we level up society? And finally, in 2019, we have the NHS Long-Term Plan, which again was looking at improved patient care and, crucially, a shift towards community care, a shift towards community working. And that, I think, is the main thrust of this current 10-year plan. It is a shift from hospital-focused to community-focused care, to preventative medicine, and using digital services, which I have to say, as I was saying to Jean before this began, when I had a bit of an IT nightmare, the very thought of moving towards digital healthcare makes me quite nervous, but I do see that it is the future, and I do see that it will assist. But the government is wanting to see more care delivered closer to home, early intervention, healthier choices, and neighbourhood health centres with teams in one place, which is starting to sound a little bit like the Sure Start centres that we used to have, the neighbourhood hubs that we used to have. And I think it was the Spanish philosopher George Santayana in 1905, I believe, who said, those who don't remember the past in history are condemned to repeat it. Sometimes it does feel in the NHS as though we are repeating and repeating, but never actually quite getting there. However, I think it's really important that we travel in hope. We can't be held back by the past, and we do need to look at the future and what we might be able to do, and what, as nurses, we can do to impact the lives of children and families, which is what we all really want to do. So I thought I would just look at some of the options that are around that would take people outside of hospital. Roles within integrated care boards are trusts for as long as they still exist. Massive opportunities, massive possibilities. Community nursing groups, community children's nursing teams, often based sometimes within hospitals, very often within health centres, tends to be working with 4 particular groups of children: those with acute or short-term conditions, those with long-term conditions, children with disabilities and complex health needs, and those who may have life-threatening, life-limiting, and possibly requiring terminal care. I think the thrust of the children's community nurse is very much preventing hospital admission, facilitating early discharge, and involving themselves with direct clinical care while really getting to know the family, really getting under the skin, knowing what makes families tick, and getting that opportunity to build a real bond with families who you may know for very many years. I'm pleased to see that the nurse in the picture is wearing a uniform such as the one that I used to wear, but I don't really think they do anymore. Children's continuing care nurses, so specialised support for children with complex needs, very often ventilated children, but enabling them to be at home, meaning that they don't need to be in hospital, improving family life and giving families, some parents, some respite. It allows for really deep relationships to build. You get to know your client group very well, and you spend very long periods of time with one family, one child, and develop a really important caring bond. Becoming part of the family network, not part of the family, but part of their support network, very much a reliable and integral part. And also within continuing care, there are nurse assessor roles, looking for those who develop the packages of care that mean these children can come out of long-term hospitals and be back at home, which is really where they want to be. Complex care nurses, very similar also to continuing care. Specialised care at home, often with ventilated children. it helping to promote the transition from home to hospital, hospital to home, a role with caregivers, training caregivers, working in a care coordination role, and big elements of multidisciplinary collaboration. Really important role to mean that families can get the best life they can with their child at home. Or ultimately, the lead nurse for safeguarding. Every trust has one, every role, every ICB has one, every hospital has one. A really, really important role, giving advocacy, giving support and training to make sure that at all times the children that we care for remain safe in their home or safe in their place of care. The role of the nurse for safeguarding can't be understressed. We all know that safeguarding is everybody's business, and it absolutely is. But there are times that it is really, really important that we have somebody that we can call on, that we can ask advice for. Increasingly, I think there are going to be roles in children's mental health support. The Children's Society in 2022 issued a report called Good Childhood, and it showed that children's happiness is continuing to deteriorate, go down, decline, that's a much better word, and that children's mental health problems are increasing. In an average classroom of 30 children, now they estimate that 5 of those children, 1 in 6, will have a mental health problem. Early intervention is key to helping these children manage this, to get the support they need, to get the help and the strategies that they can go on to live healthy childhoods. 50% of mental health problems begin before the age of 14. You cannot understress the importance of the nursing role, early intervention, early identification, and early support. If we are looking to have the healthiest childhood that we can, we need to be looking at early intervention, early prevention, CAMS in the community, CAMS in schools, and also increasingly perinatal mental health, how we can help parents during pregnancy, mothers during pregnancy, and in the first year of life to support that bond, to assess the care, and to help look after the infant while the mother manages her mental health issues. These are all roles that are slightly outside the conventional nursing path, but really important. And I think as we move towards a greater focus on prevention, a greater focus towards community care, these things will become more and more important. Also, public health nursing. Now, I think it's specialised skipping, isn't it? Specialised children's palliative care nurses, a very important role, and one purely working in the community. There's health visiting. The health visitor role goes back to 1862, and as you will all know, it's universal and targeted support. The Healthy Child Programme, one of the government interventions, 0 to 19, relies on health visitors for the 0 to 5 years. Preventative care, parenting support, and focus on screening, prevention, healthy lifestyles, and early intervention for at-risk families. It's also a really good community role. A friend of mine used to be the ward sister on a busy bone marrow transplant unit, and she left to train to be a health visitor, and I asked her why. And she said because she really wanted to feel part of a community. She really wanted to be working with families, to get to know them, to get to know what makes them tick, and to feel that she was making a difference to support families raising the children as best they can. We know that in 2025, it was estimated that 31% of children are living in poverty in the UK. That's a pretty frightening statistic, and health visitors have a really important role in the early identification of vulnerable families, in the help that we can possibly give, supporting them, a bit of advocacy, pointing them towards food banks, helping them make healthy choices. It's a really important role. It's not a role without its entertainment, though. My friend that trained to be a health visitor went to do a first baby visit when in quite an affluent part of the area in which she worked, and she got there complete with her baby scales and went to the door, and the door was a bit open, so she knocked on the door and she called and she said it was the health visitor. She didn't hear any answer, so she went in again and called health visitor. No answer again, so she walked through the front door, which might have been her first mistake. at which point from the kitchen leapt a man who fortunately did turn out to be the father of the baby, but he was stark naked and brandishing a machete. At which point my friend was a little bit alarmed, and the man took one look at her and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was expecting my friend." So she did the visit, weighed the baby, got back in her car, and then thought, was that a safeguarding issue? And she was wondering whether or not she really ought to ring the lead nurse for safeguarding. You just don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But as a health visitor, you have an ideal opportunity to go to meet families, to find out what makes them tick, and to help them. Another main role, school nursing. Now, I'm sure that most people would be pretty horrified if they thought the school nurse role looked like that anymore. And certainly the days of sort of Nitty Nora coming round to check children's head lice situation has gone. But again, looking at the Healthy Child programme, the school nurse is integral in the delivery of this from the 5 to 19-year-olds, very much promoting student health, early intervention, managing chronic illness to enable children to be in school. We know that missed school attendance hugely impacts on children's academic performance and long-term life chances. School nurse has a vital part in being the bridge between school, the bridge between home. Families can go directly to the school nurse, and they're very much involved in preventative care, health promotion, healthy eating, sexual health. I have to say that when I was at school, I went to an all-girls school, and the only sex education that our school nurse gave us was to sit us down in a room and tell us that vodka was a very dangerous drink. I don't think it helped any of us terribly much, except we probably all wanted to go out and try vodka to see in what way it was a dangerous drink. But now we know that the health promotion, that the sexual education that school nurses carry out is reducing the level of under 18 conception. So important if we want to maximize young people's life chances, so that they don't get compromised in ways that could be potentially avoided. It's really important. The school nurse role possibly impacts in the Healthy Child programme most on area 4 in reducing vulnerabilities and improving life chances. I think that the school nurse is so integral in the community, becomes very much a part. There's a big question about immunisations. Do school nurses do them? Do they not? I think increasingly the role of immunisation is coming back into school. But certainly in terms of health prevention, in terms of managing children with chronic illness in school, it's very much a role that children can do. And also for children who are educated at home. We all know the stories about children who are educated at home who sort of fall off the radar and nobody quite knows what's going on. School nurses have a real role there to, where possible, keep an eye on these children, keep a check on them, keep a check on their health, and make sure that they are staying on somebody's radar. We know that the school nurse has a vital role in mental health support, in mental health well-being in school, in helping children deal with low-level anxiety, low-level school refusal. They are a link between school and home to ensure that the tailored, accessible support is there if families need it. My school nurse believed everything could be cured with a crushed up paracetamol in milk. I don't think that's the case anymore, but I do think that we do need to look at how we can better use these roles. We know that in 2021, over a quarter of children around the age of 10 were living with obesity. It is an emerging health problem if we don't deal with it, if we don't get in there with early intervention. All these things are so dependent on funding. And if the government really does want to move towards a preventative healthcare, to move towards greater preventative work, greater community service, it will need investment. But I think that we have to believe it will happen. We have to believe that it is the way forward. There's also community interest companies working in health and social care. These are quite interesting bodies, as many of you I think will know. They are unique in their setup really, and they're adaptable. They're very often partnered with the NHS, partnered with local authorities. They take on to deliver the contracts that can be available. But it does give them the opportunity to provide some quite innovative services. Working with children in care often falls to the CICs. Checking that these children's health is monitored, their health is assessed, working with foster carers to help them maximise children in care, children who are in local authority accommodation, to maximise their life chances while offering really valuable, valuable support to the foster carers. Promotion of well-being, neurodevelopmental nursing, very often working with children with autistic spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder, very much involved in the assessment, in the care, in the treatment plans, and again, working with families to support them at home. Neurodisability, special educational needs, and specialist services such as bladder and bowel services. They are an interesting way of delivering healthcare, slightly outside the NHS, but still very much working within NHS terms and conditions, but giving just a little bit more, possibly a little bit more flexibility. And for those who maybe want to move away fully from the NHS, children's hospices, the children's hospice movement began, as I think you all know, with Helen House in Oxford, established by Mother Francis, Sister Francis. And there are now 52 children's hospices in the UK. Children's hospices offer a wonderful array of roles for nurses, vital roles. Lead nurse for play. Play is the work of children. Play is how they learn. Play is how they develop. Play is how they make sense of what's going on in their world. Really important. Children's hospices are often, people can have a very preconceived idea of what a children's hospice might be like. Will it be miserable? Will it be sad? I mean, people who work there tell you that they're focused on living, focused on joy. And if you ask nurses who work there why they like them, they will tell you that they have the opportunity for high quality one-to-one care with a real holistic family approach. There's lots of opportunities. There's clinical nurses, obviously, within children's hospices. There's sibling support, so important. Lead nurses for sibling work, so important that they feel included, understand what's going on. A little boy once said to me, I don't like visiting my brother in hospital. And I said, no, and it's quite boring really, isn't it? And he said, no, it's not that. It's just if I go to hospital, everybody knows my mum and dad and everybody knows my brother, but nobody even knows my name. It is so important that these children feel involved and included in what's going on in their family lives. It is a vital role to be somebody with a focus on sibling support, helping them understand, helping them make sense of a world in which, with the best will in the world, parents' focus is very often on the sick child. Bereavement support, phenomenally important. We know that childhood bereavement has a long-term impact on children. To be able to work with these children, to help them make sense of what's happened, to help them make sense of the world in which they live and how it has changed, is so important. I worked a long time ago with a family who had 4 boys, and the youngest boy, who was 3 at the time, was dying. He had neuroblastoma, and he died. And the family had managed the whole experience as well as they possibly could. They'd managed to create a normality in a really abnormal world, in a really abnormal situation. The boys were all very involved. They knew what was going on. When their brother died, they'd seen him after he died. They went to the funeral. If you wanted a sort of textbook case of how to do things well, they were excellent. They were so good. And about 4 or 5 weeks after their little boy died, the mother rang me and asked if I would go and see his 5-year-old brother, who was having night terrors. So I went to see him and I said, you know, that his mum was saying he was having nightmares, and was there anything that he wanted to tell me? And he said, yes, he was having nightmares about Adam, his brother. And I said, oh, tell me about it. What do what's worrying you? And he said, well, I know when Adam died, he didn't need his body anymore. And I know then that we put his body in the coffin and we buried it. And I said, yeah, that's right. You were there. You saw what we did. And he said, yeah, I know we put his body in the coffin, but where did we put his head? And because for a little child, this is your body and this is your head, he was quite convinced that somewhere in the house was his brother's head and somewhere he would find it. The ability to work with these children and help them make sense of their experience, help them remain part of their family, a changed family, help parents support themselves, support brothers and sisters, is a really vital role for the nurse. It's a wonderful role. It gives you time, it allows you to develop different interventions, and it is something that will have a lifelong impact on the families with whom you are in contact. It is an amazing place. I think children's hospices are a great invention. I think it is to be remembered that they're very much about respite care. They're about giving families family time. They're about giving nurses time to develop that relationship with families that they will see over many years and feel that they're really making an impact, making a difference. Other roles may be within the voluntary sector. Specialist nurses working sometimes with children with disease specific, so perhaps with children with cancer, perhaps with children with renal disease, cystic fibrosis, or children with complex health needs. Really valuable, really lovely job. Something that you can look at to develop skills in a particular area while developing a speciality. You might be based within a hospital, you might not, but it means that you will be in a position to meet others. Thing I would say about leaving, perhaps going into the voluntary sector, is it is quite important that you consider your terms and conditions. Many will adhere to the NHS terms and conditions, that your pension will travel over, your terms and conditions will be the same, but not all. So it's absolutely worth just being sure about that, just making sure. You're also likely to become much more involved in fundraising. It is possibly a slightly more precarious job role. It depends very much on fundraise money or government money. It isn't always secure, but it does give a degree of adaptability, a degree of flexibility, and somewhere that you can really hone skills, become deeply specialist in what you do and in what you know. There is absolutely no part of me, not an ounce of me, that regrets doing my nurse training. Apart from the hat, possibly, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed my time as a nurse. It gave me the most incredible springboard into the rest of the career that I've had. I've had a great career. I've felt very much that what I've done has impacted on families, has helped improve outcomes for families, has helped change them, and given me flexibility. It's given me, my nurse training gave me so many choices, so many flexibilities. I think the thing to remember is that really there are no wrong choices. Possibly apart from robbing a bank, but within nursing there are no wrong choices. You try something. I thought that being a ward nurse was what I was going to want to do for the rest of my days. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I changed, I'm glad I moved, but believe me, there is nothing that you can't do. With a nursing training behind you, you have got free range. The sky's the limit. There is nowhere that you can't go. You can work in hospitals, you can work in the community, you can work for the NHS, not for the NHS. It is a limitless possibility for you, and it's really exciting. I think that we should remember that while not a children's nurse, there really is nowhere that you can't go. If a nurse can become the first female Archbishop of Canterbury, I think that really the sky is the limit. You are very, very much the present and the future of children's nursing. You have the possibility to impact on families every day of your working life. You have the potential to shape the ongoing development of children's nursing, of what nursing is going to look like in the future. It is a really exciting time, I think, to be a nurse. There is a focus on nursing, there is a focus on moving away from hospitals. I think the sky is the limit for what you may or may not want to do. Somebody once told me that when you are coming to the end of a presentation, it's really important that you finish with a philosophical quote. It's really important that you finish with a meaningful statement that people can take away and that people can mull over. So let me introduce you to William James. William James was an American philosopher in the 19th century, and he said, oh, I didn't say it here at all. What he said, it's not coming up on the slide, is act as though what you do makes a difference, because it does. You make a difference every single day of your working life. You impact on the children and the families that you see every day of your working life. Because of you, their outcomes are better, their life chances are better. It is an amazing opportunity. It is an amazing career. I wish every single one of you every success, whatever way you go, whatever road you take. You will not regret being a nurse. You will not regret being part of the ABPN. It is really important that you feel part of a community, but very much knowing that you as an individual are making a difference and making an impact. I wish you every success, and I thank you very much for your time today. Thank you. Jean, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, and lots of food for thought there. And yes, such an interesting presentation. I would like to ask members on the call if they have got any comments. I can see people are giving you a round of applause. I'd like to do that too. Fiona, you have your hand up. Please come in.
I do, Anne. I wonder if you could give colleagues on the call any advice about how to move children's nursing forward to secure children and young people's healthcare and to influence policy, ministers, and many other stakeholders.
Well, thank you for that simple question, Fiona, that can easily be answered in a sentence. I think it is a really exciting time for children's nursing. I also think it's quite a vulnerable time. I think the decision of, I think it might be the University of Nottingham, but I might be wrong about that, to suspend their children's nursing training is very worrying. I would strongly encourage people to lobby. I would strongly encourage people to write to their MPs. I would strongly encourage people to be part of groups, the ABPN, the Royal College of Nursing. There are lots of different ways that you can influence and impact change. The RCN has special interest groups. I would encourage people to join them. I would encourage people to get to know their local communities, know what's going on, and just be vocal. Be proud of the fact you're a children's nurse. You make a difference. Does that answer it, Fiona? Because it's actually quite a difficult question, that.
It does. For those on the call, the ABPN is endeavouring to influence behind the scenes. If you have thoughts about issues or concerns or what have you, that is exactly the kind of thing that we are looking to hear from nurses from across the country, both in England and in the other devolved nations. Intelligence gathering is really crucial in terms of influencing the future.
I think we all talk a lot about evidence-based practice, and I think there are times that gathering your evidence base, being able to prove the outcomes, we know that good community nursing, the bridge between home and hospital, facilitates early discharge. We know that it prevents hospital admission. We need to help the government see that actually investment in nursing, investment in children's nursing is economically sensible. It does reduce costs to the NHS, and more than that, it benefits children and families greatly. I think I might have stunned people into silence.
Thank you, Anne. It's really thought-provoking that many very experienced nursing, and Katrina might come in because she obviously led the oral history project in nursing. You know, how many times we've raised the same issues, asked the same questions, tried to implement all these initiatives that you were talking about, Anne, and plans. And while there are some improvements, they're not quite all the improvements that we wish to see, certainly many years ago. So, Katrina, may I invite you to make a comment, please?
Hi, thanks, Jean. I think, and I'll unashamedly sort of flag to other people on the call that may not have seen it. Have a look at what we call the Blue Book, which is actually the history of the Association of British Paediatric Nurses, ABPN, because the challenges we see now are the challenges that we've seen previously. Over years, we seem to go into that cycle. And I think the challenges to our profession, to our training, and going back to Anne's first slide, that recognition of Catherine Wood, where we were talking about the special needs of our cohort. It's really important. So having a look at that and seeing that, yes, we have constantly challenged. I think it's sad again that we need to be justifying the role of children's nurses. But in the past, what's worked is us all working together, as actually being there, having a strong voice. And really, the association's voice is only as strong as the membership. So it's an unashamed sort of call for people to think about membership of the ABPN to make the future of children's nursing what we want it to be. The Oral History Project sort of was the support came in around our 85th anniversary. So we wanted to reflect on all of our individual histories. And one of the things that really stood out for me, so we have 103 histories, which is available, and you can sort of follow those links sort of through our website. But overwhelming sense of we need nurses with the special skills to nurse children. Don't let our registration disappear. And whilst our registration may not be under threat, our preparation of nurses for the future seems to be. So I think, yeah, we've tackled this through history. What we need is that strong voice, and what we need is children's nurses' voices supporting ABPN so that we do speak with that strength of the profession.
Thank you very much, Katrina. Certainly added wise words there. So, have we any comments, please, or observations, or any pledges of what you might do in the future to strengthen the children's nursing profession? You know, we've heard how we can make a difference. Has anybody got anything they would like to say as words of encouragement for the future for us? Because you are our future on the call. Yes, Katrina.
I'd just like to thank people so for example, we have reflected and provided information to the assisted dying bills that are being discussed.
Yes.
We haven't actually said whether we are for or against that, because we're a membership organisation and we don't know what members believe. But what we have been able to do is flag the specific issues around young people and around sort of neurodevelopment, and we're well placed to do that. But what members have done is that they have then written to members of the House of Lords who they perhaps know, who they've had contact with, and that has brought children, well, young people's issues into the forefront of debate, and have mentions of ABPN. So I just use that as a positive way. And the fact that we do ask, if you sort of look on our website, we are asking for views on different things. So I'd really say, please, can you help us and tell us what you think? Everyone who's out there working with children has got really valuable contributions that we can make. So yeah, it's a plea for more. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly agree with that. Katrina, please come back to us, Anne.
I was just going to violently agree with Katrina, really. I think it is always a bit of an issue because children are a smaller part of the population than the wider population. And we do, as a group of children's nurses, need to keep our voice heard, because otherwise we will get overlooked with the other nursing disciplines. And I'm not saying anyone is greater or lesser importance, but I think it's really important, you know, like the adverts used to be, you do better if you work in unison. I think the more that people can come together, be that voice, it's really important for the future.
Thank you. I cannot see any other comments coming in at all. So it just remains for me, and if you're happy to just type in the chat a thank you to everyone. I don't know if you've got any last comments that you would like to make, Anne.
I think when I was a staff nurse, I was doing a night round one night, and the doctor, the registrar leading the round, said to me, where were the child's x-rays? And I started walking up the ward to get them. And the rather flamboyant nursing officer at the time shouted up the ward at me and said, staff nurse, did you train for 4 years to be an independent professional, or did you train for 4 years to be a doctor's handmaiden? If the doctor wants to know where the x-rays are, tell him. And I think that's the thing to hold on to. We're all professionals in our own right. We all have a really important role to play. Be proud of what you do. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much,
everybody.
Thank you. With that, we'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much again, Anne, and thank you all for joining. Please continue to follow us at ABPN. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Anne.
Very welcome. See you soon. Bye.
Yeah, just stay for a minute, Anne.
Oh, she's gone.
Yes, you're still there, Fiona.
I am. Everybody's
Gigi's
just leaving.
I think Gigi joined us at the very beginning. She's still on the call. Okay, then I'm going to stop recording now because
Thanks.
yeah, recording's